every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. For our third segment of the show here on today's edition, we are looking at Sunday Night Football. I wanted to look ahead to this game, perhaps the best game of the entire weekend. We don't necessarily get to talk about it as often, as we're not a weekend show to be around and talk about Sunday Night Football. But since it's a nice matchup in the AFC between two juggernauts looking to kind of maintain a dominant force of nature in the AFC, I think that's going to be an interesting game that I want to look at before, the show leaves for the weekend and comes back Monday. So without further ado, let's jump right into our third segment of the day here. In terms of this game, Bills-Ravens, like I said, marquee matchup. Kind of talked about it a little bit in the first segment. But I think that ultimately this game is going to be about pride for both of these teams. For Baltimore, they are going to want to come out swinging because they don't want to lose their pride in going 1-3 in the very tough AFC North, albeit an AFC North that's kind of weird right now. The Steelers are 3-0. The Browns are a dumpster fire. The Bengals are at risk potentially of going 0-4. They're 0-3 right now. And then the Ravens as well, kind of, in a weird position where they could be in a situation where they'd be at least 2-1 or 3-0, but a couple of plays don't go their way. They give up that win against the Raiders. And yeah, they're just a very weird, fickle team right now. On the Bills side of things, they look like my potential Super Bowl contender, if you want my honest opinion, from the AFC because of the way their offenses play. Let me mention in that first segment, I love how Josh Allen looks like now. As Andre says, playing Gibbs and Kyron this week, I'm nervous. Well, as someone who also doesn't have fantastic depth at the running back position, I feel you, my man. But their matchups are very intriguing, right? Because Gibbs against that Seahawks interior kind of might have a favorable matchup. It is all about touches. I understand that, and it seems like Montgomery's going to get a little bit more in that regard. But Gibbs at least will not have to face Byron Murphy or Leonard Williams. I don't necessarily know as much about Leonard Williams playing, but I do know that Byron Murphy will be out of that game. So as long as the Lions' run game is still relied upon, I think, though, that they are going to switch a little bit more to the pass game to try and frustrate Seattle in that regard. But Gibbs still is someone who I might be intrigued to see play on. And Kyron, he's going against the Bears defense, not necessarily the best run defense, but at the end of the day, they are still a very feisty, opportunistic one. So it depends on how they utilize him, because as a pass catcher, he's going to add a lot of value, because I don't necessarily think the Rams rely that much right now on any one receiver over a guy like Kyron Williams. So that could help him in that regard, but I get what you're coming from, because both of those defensive matchups could be very daunting for both of those running backs. But going back to this Bills-Ravens game, on the Bills side of things, talking about how their offense is really becoming a juggernaut. I really like I said, Joe Brady and what he's done for this offense. But at the end of the day, it really is going to come down to, as Andre also mentions, Gibson PPR just scares me. He can score a rushing and receiving touchdown. Yeah, I mean, in PPR as well, I feel like Gibbs, is one of those boomer bust guys week in, week out right now, where his capabilities, but it's just that the Lions' offense is an enigma right now. As Andre also mentions, what do I do with Garrett Wilson? Josh Allen for MVP. Right now, I agree with that MVP pick. But in terms of Garrett Wilson, yeah, man, I don't really know what to say about him, because I, for what it's worth, am trying to keep my cool with him. I'm keeping him on my fantasy team for as long as possible, waiting for that breakout game. But I sincerely don't know when it will come, because, as I said before, Aaron Rodgers seems to be honed in on the players who he likes, and that's Lazard, and that's Conklin, and that's the players who can get open for him. Right now, it seems like he doesn't necessarily trust the overall structure of this offense and what it could be if he kind of utilizes Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall to positive effect. So that could lead to his detriment, but I'm still holding out hope for Garrett Wilson in this offense. Like you said, Josh Allen's playing MVP level football for this Bills team. Let's look at the betting preview because it spells a different story here. Baltimore, a pretty surprising 2.5-point favorite. Even at home, yes, I understand the home advantage for them can be a positive thing, but I would still say that Bills deserve to be the favorites in this game for what they've done for the past couple of weeks. The over-under is 46.5. The money line's Baltimore minus 135. Buffalo plus 115. So as you can see, it is kind of one of those betting lines where you feel like the odds makers let you down in terms of who you believe is the deserved favorite, but it's still kind of a viable betting market as well. You can't just ignore the fact that even though the Bills might be the more deserving team in terms of the betting line, you still have to understand the whole context of the game as well. And I think that this game will be more even than people think. I think that if Lamar is timely with his legs and the Baltimore offensive line holds up, then I think that we could be having a nice little shootout of a game here. But at the current moment in time, I trust the Bills offense a lot more than I trust the Ravens, just because of the comfortability Josh Allen is playing with, just because of the fact that you really can't necessarily account for one specific player in that Bills offense and say, if we lock him down, we have a better chance, because Josh Allen will just find the open guy. You'll find Khalil Shakir if you lock down Dalton Kincaid. You'll find Dalton Kincaid if you lock down Keon Coleman. You'll find James Cook in the screen game if you lock down, say, Ty Johnson. He just has so many ways to utilize this offense to the best of his abilities, so many ways to keep it on schedule that I just can't for the life of me find out a way or an offensive game plan for the Ravens to slow it down. And speaking of the defenses, yes, both of them have major concerns, but what the Bills defense has been able to do is limit the pass game. And right now, the Ravens pass game, I can't necessarily say is at its best right now. I have very little faith, and we'll talk about this in my Stardom Sit-em segment coming up next, in the ability to utilize guys like Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely down the field if you know this offensive line doesn't hold up. I have faith in Lamar Jackson's escapability. I have faith that he will try and keep this offense on schedule. And I potentially will start to have more faith in Derrick Henry as well as an option out of the backfield. But for now, I feel like if you don't really have a passing game, you don't really have anything to threaten the Bills' defense with. That being said, that could play into the hands of Derrick Henry, and he could pretend to have a big game. But at this current moment in time, I'm giving the slight advantage to the Bills' defense and their kind of task ahead of them, and the Ravens' defense in terms of trying to slow down the many different weapons that Josh Allen has at his disposal. But in terms of how I'm leaning in this game, I think that the Bills should win outright, but Baltimore is going to keep it close. You know, I am kind of shocked at the spread in terms of, what we've seen from both of these teams, but it is a liable spread. I'm not going to shy away from it just because, I think the Ravens got the luck of the draw here undeservedly. I'm going to say that I'm saying this with my chest and saying that the Bills will win outright, and I'm confident in that pick. But at the current moment right now, I wouldn't be shocked if, Baltimore, with timely opportunistic plays, kept themselves in it. Now, it's going to be a tough task, and as long as, Lamar Jackson keeps himself upright, I can see a game where Baltimore might take this outright and cover the spread. But it's going to be, like I said, very difficult if you have a very limited pass game. So I think the game plan for the Ravens, let's start with them, is going to have to come down to Lamar Jackson's timeliness and decision-making. If he's confident with his legs, confident in stretching the field, stretching the linebackers, and making them uncomfortable on the Bills side of things, then they might have a chance. But, if the Bills are doing a good job of generating pressure, Lamar's having to create a structure, then I start to worry about what the Baltimore offense will look like, because this O-line we've already seen time and time again can't keep up. On the Bills side of things, I just think that Josh Allen has to continue being Josh Allen. Continue being the guy who we've seen for the past 3 weeks. Continue being the guy who, like Andre says, is right now the top MVP candidate. And I think that he'll be fine. In terms of who I want to see on this offense step up, I don't think anyone needs to step up as much as continue doing what is asked of them. Continue making themselves available for Josh Allen, because at the end of the day, I wouldn't be mad at any Bills from a fantasy perspective, actually, if all of them have very similar stat lines. And it's been the case through the past couple of weeks. So as long as the Bills, utilize their offense to the best of their abilities, Josh Allen plays like himself, then I think the Bills should easily win this. But like I said, the Ravens' game plan is all down to Lamar Jackson. And he, as well as Allen, are two of the best dual-threat quarterbacks in the league. So no matter what, this could be a very fun game. But it's going to be all about timeliness. As Andre says, who are some receivers you would trade Garrett Wilson for? I think that's a very interesting question, because Garrett Wilson is such a hard receiver to kind of diagnose in terms of importance, whether he be, someone who you're thinking about starting in your wide receiver 1 position, or someone who's a wide receiver 2 flex kind of option for you. But I would say, since your wide receiver room is so fantastic, you could have an opportunity to either, take Garrett Wilson week by week, keep him on your bench, either drop him or trade him as the week goes on, and see how a guy like Jawan Jennings pans out. Because Jawan Jennings, like I said when I was talking about him in terms of him being on the waiver wire and him now stepping into a bigger role for San Fran, I actually think that this can be maintained throughout the year, no matter who's, as Andre said, he's my wide receiver 2 in a 3-receiver league, full PPR. So again, I say if you don't value him as someone who you expect week in, week out to put up big numbers, and he's hovering somewhere around your wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 3 or on your bench, then you can take a flyer on him in the next couple of weeks and pick up a guy like Jawan Jennings, because Jawan Jennings seems like he's not an aberration. He's not someone who's going to disappear once pieces for the 49ers offense comes back. So that's someone who I would monitor, but it is a big risk, because Garrett Wilson at the end of the day still would add more value, I believe, than Jawan Jennings to the Jets if Aaron Rodgers starts to utilize him more. So I would still keep him for now, is my advice, but week in, week out, if you see that there's a pattern in the ineffectiveness that he's being in this Jets offense, then I would say either trade him, drop him, and pick up a guy like Jennings, if Jennings is either on a team or still out there by that point. But that's probably the best advice I can give you, because he is going to be a very weird wide receiver to monitor throughout the year. But my final statements in terms of this Bills-Ravens game is that it's going to be a shootout. There's going to be a lot of nice little fantasy options, but that will be a perfect segue to my next segment after the quick break we're going to be about to take. We will be looking at the stardom-sit-em options for Sunday Night Football. Who do I think will shine, as Andre says he's worth potentially benching this week? Well, I think they're in a positive matchup. So, actually, as Andre says, bad matchup versus Surtain. Yeah, I think that you can justify doing that, even though we know the sum of the parts of the Broncos defense isn't as good as Pat Surtain's loan. As Tapton Learn says, if Wilson gains Rodgers' trust, watch out. Then again, it's all about Aaron Rodgers more than it is about Aaron Wilson. If Aaron Rodgers, wants to throw to his guys, Rodgers will throw to his guys. But he still has Wilson as an option. And that's all I can give you. But we do have to take a quick break. On the other side, we're looking at some stardom options. Like I said, for Sunday Night Football. We'll be right back.